And what about like in these high stakes situations? I mean, first responders are constantly in high stakes, high stress situations. Athletes are in the game.
Yeah.
Sometimes don't have the time to pause, so to speak, or stop. Um, how do we prepare ourselves for these moments?
Well, with mindfulness practice, essentially what you're doing is you're strengthening your ability to toggle between the two. So to toggle between reacting and responding. Um, to give another analogy, high performance race cars are manual transmissions, right? They're not automatic transmissions. And so as an athlete or an elite performer, like a first responder, by cultivating different types of mindfulness practice, you have that ability to manually toggle, specific to the incident that you're responding to, versus responding with limited information. So I like to sort of illustrate to people, it's like tunnel vision, right? You can see this much of the picture, or you can open it up and you can see this much. And as a first responder, I want to see this much, I want to see what's coming at me from the side. I don't want to be limited and make my decision based on a very, very small area of focus.
And how have we been, how have first responders been training in this area? Like what's a typical training that would address this area of perspective taking?
Well, in my era, we didn't do any. And it's just recently been coming into Canada. Like I said, the fellow that I mentioned earlier, Rich Gerling, has been sort of leading the charge in the States. They're definitely ahead of us in cultivating this type of training. But I mean, Canada is, we're beginning. Obviously, we've had to respond. I mean, if you look at the statistics, officers in Canada are killed by their own hand at a much higher percentage than any bad guy. So the stress is taking its toll.
No doubt. No doubt. Yeah. And it's, we've seen a lot of those types of incidences across Canada and the police force, and looking for solutions. So hopefully we can, it's kind of hitting the bottom, and hopefully these systems can respond by offering these types of trainings that we've seen work in so many times. And what are some key ways that you've seen kind of more traditional mindfulness training be adapted for specific performance contexts, performance groups?
Sorry, in athletics or in policing?
Oh, well, in either, yeah.
It's interesting because the very concept of diaphragmatic breathing has been in our emergency response teams training for decades in Canada. We call it ERT in the States, or on TV, you'd be familiar with SWAT teams. And they use it in a lot of their tactical training. But they don't call it diaphragmatic breathing, they call it tactical breathing. And just by repackaging it, it seems to work. There was a neat Mythbusters episode that examined tactical breathing specifically. And what they did was they took a sniper and they put him in a plexiglass box, they wired him up, and they cranked up the temperature in the box. So he had all his tac gear on and all these wires. And as your body's basal temperature goes up, your heart rate will go up. It's just the way we're wired. But he had done so much training with breathing that he was able to bring his breath down, and he would actually shoot in between heartbeats so that he didn't affect his shot. And so it's about a 6-minute clip. And they cranked up, I think it was over 100 degrees Fahrenheit in his box. And he was able to bring his heart rate right down. And then again, and because they had him wired up, you could see that he actually was able to shoot in between heartbeats.
So this brings up an interesting conversation about the role of mindfulness and performance. And I've heard lots of talk and kind of debate around, is mindfulness just attentional training? Are we trying, mindfulness for a sniper? Are we just trying to make them a better sniper? So, what role does mindset or ethics play in in mindfulness in the area of performance?
Well, I think it was Spider-Man that quoted, with great power comes great responsibility. Obviously, that applies. I mean, the example I cited was to do with the sniper, but different facets of mindfulness training target different areas of the brain. Obviously, we would want you to have the broad spectrum. There was a study that was done in Germany that actually looked at mindfulness that trained attention, mindfulness that trained loving kindness, or what we call metta, which is compassion and empathy, and then another one which trained open awareness, so perspective. And what they found was it actually grew the regions of the brain specifically to where those are housed. So, where cognition, where perspective is housed in the brain, if you do that specific type of meditation, it'll actually grow the cortical thickness in those regions of the brain. Hopefully people don't ask a whole ton of questions because I'm not a neuroscientist. I've just read the research.